Imagine this, a brilliant kid, the son of one of the richest men in the city, locked in a room with walls made of glass, surrounded by the finest tutors money could buy. Yet, he was failing. His future, everyone said, was a sinking ship. And then, imagine the one person who saved him was someone the world had taught him to ignore, a woman who wasn't even supposed to be in the room. This is a story about what happens when you see the humanity in someone society has deemed invisible. It's a story about a math test, a diamond ring, and a lesson that changed a billionaire's life forever. Hi everyone, my name is Neha and welcome to the channel. The place where stories are not just told, they stay with you and quietly change the way you think. If you love meaningful stories with powerful life lessons, then you are in the right place. Now sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story about Mr. Sterling, a man whose wealth could buy a small country, but whose heart was locked up tighter than his own vault. Mr. Sterling was a titan of industry. He had built an empire from nothing, and he ruled it with an iron fist. His name was synonymous with success, power, and a cold, calculating logic. Everything in his life was a transaction, a calculation. If something didn't add up, it was worthless. And by that logic, his own son, Ethan, was starting to look like a terrible investment. Ethan was 12 years old. He was a bright, gentle, and deeply curious boy, but he had a problem that baffled his father. He was failing math. For Mr. Sterling, whose entire life was a complex equation, this was a catastrophic failure. It wasn't just a bad grade, it was a stain on the family name, a blip in the perfect data of his life. He had done everything right. He had hired a rotating cast of the most prestigious tutors in the city. They came with PhDs, with fancy resumes, and with hourly rates that could feed a family for a month. They would sit with Ethan in the library, a room lined with first edition books, and talk about trigonometry and algebra. But Ethan just didn't get it. He would stare at the numbers, his brow furrowed, his hands fidgeting. He felt stupid. He felt like a disappointment. The tutors, frustrated by his lack of progress, would label him slow or uncooperative. One even suggested he might have a learning disability. Mr. Sterling, hearing this, felt a cold fury. In his world, there were no excuses, only results. The pressure on Ethan was immense, a crushing weight that was slowly snuffing out his spark. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Mr. Sterling had come home early from a board meeting to collect a forgotten document. The house was quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by an unsettling silence. He walked past the library, and his footsteps paused. He heard a voice he didn't recognize. It was soft, patient, and filled with a warmth that was entirely absent from the sterile, calculated voices of the tutors. He peered through the crack in the door. The scene inside stopped him cold. It wasn't a tutor with a PhD. It wasn't a certified expert. It was Mrs. Gable, their maid. Mrs. Gable had been working for the family for years. She was a quiet, dignified woman who came in every day, cleaned their massive apartment, did the laundry, and left. To Mr. Sterling, she was a part of the furniture, as invisible as the air vents. He knew her name, but he didn't really know her. He never had a conversation with her that wasn't an instruction. She was a service provider, a line item in his monthly budget. But right now, she was sitting on the floor next to his son, on the expensive Persian rug. She had a piece of chalk in her hand, and she was drawing numbers and shapes on the dark polished wood of the floor. Ethan, his face a mask of concentration, was watching her intently. "Now, Ethan," she said, her voice a soft, melodic murmur. "See how these numbers? They're not just numbers, honey. They're like people. Some get along, some don't. The plus sign, he's a friendly fellow. He wants to bring everyone together. The minus sign, well, he's a bit of a grump. He likes to take things away. But you just have to get to know them." Ethan let out a small, discouraged groan. "But I don't get it, Mrs. Gable. I've tried and tried. My dad says it's about being smart, but I just feel so stupid." A flicker of something like pain crossed Mrs. Gable's face. "Oh, honey," she said, reaching out and taking his hand. "Don't you ever say that. You ain't stupid. You're just learning a different way, that's all." Mr. Sterling, hidden in the shadows, felt a strange, sharp pang. He had never spoken to his son like that, with such unconditional acceptance. He had always used criticism as a tool, thinking it would make Ethan stronger. But looking at his son now, he saw a boy who was broken, not motivated. Mrs. Gable looked at the problem on the floor. "All right, let's try this. Life is like a recipe, right? If you're baking a cake, you don't just think about the flour and the sugar as ingredients. You think about the feeling of the cake, the warmth it brings to a room, the joy on someone's face when they take a bite. This math test, it's not your enemy. It's just a puzzle. And you, my boy, are the person who's going to solve it. For yourself. Not for your daddy. For you. She then pulled a small, worn object from her pocket. It was a small, beautifully cut diamond, the kind you might see in a ring. It was clearly old, its edges slightly worn but still dazzling. She placed it on the floor. My grandmother gave me this, she said, her voice softening with memory. She was a maid, too. And she told me, people will always judge you by the package you come in, but your sparkle, that's something they can't ever take from you. Ethan looked at the diamond, captivated. He reached out and touched it gently. It's beautiful. It is, she agreed. But you know, a diamond is just a piece of coal that did really well under pressure. It survived a lot of heat and a lot of weight. And do you know what it does? Ethan shook his head. It shines, she said, her eyes glistening. It takes all that pressure and turns it into light. That's what you have to do. Take this pressure from your daddy and from the school and turn it into light. You can do this. Mr. Sterling watched, transfixed. He had never seen his son so engaged. He had never seen a teacher, no, he realized, a mentor, who approached his son with such profound kindness and understanding. The equation was shifting in his mind. The value of Mrs. Gable was no longer just the cost of her hourly wage. It was immeasurable. Mr. Sterling stepped into the room. The sound of his expensive shoes on the wooden floor broke the spell. Dad. Ethan jumped up, his face turning pale with fear. I wasn't. Mrs. Gable scrambled to her feet, her face a mask of fear. She quickly scooped up the diamond and clutched it in her hand. Mr. Sterling, she stammered, her voice trembling. I am so sorry, sir. I was just finishing up the cleaning and I saw he was struggling and I was just about to go. I'm so sorry for disturbing you, sir. She was terrified. In her world, the world of the invisible, her job was everything. She had seen other maids fired for lesser offenses. She was expecting to be screamed at. She was expecting to be fired. She was expecting to be thrown out of this world she had only been a guest in. But Mr. Sterling just stared at her. He wasn't looking at the maid. He was looking at the woman who had just given his son a piece of her own history to inspire him. He was looking at the woman who had treated his child with more kindness and respect than he had shown him in years. Mrs. Gable, he said, his voice unusually quiet. He walked slowly towards her. She flinched, expecting a blow. He stopped just before her. What is it you have in your hand? Her hand trembled as she opened it to reveal the small, sparkling diamond. Sir, she began, her voice wavering with fear. It's mine. It's all I have from my grandmother. I wasn't stealing, I promise. I was just trying to make a point. Mr. Sterling nodded, his eyes fixed on the diamond. He didn't take it. He simply observed it. He then looked from the diamond, to the chalk drawings on the floor, to his son's face, which was still etched with worry, but now held a tiny glimmer of hope that wasn't there before. Ethan, he said, turning to his son. Did Mrs. Gable help you understand the problem? Ethan nodded hesitantly. Yes, sir. She explained it in a way that made sense. Like a recipe. Mr. Sterling slowly sank to his knees. The perfect, crisp lines of his $1,000 suit crumpled as he knelt on the floor next to his son and the maid. It was a shockingly human act from a man who seemed to be made of marble. He looked at Mrs. Gable. Teach him, he said simply. Mrs. Gable, shocked, asked, Sir? Mr. Sterling pointed to the diamond in her hand. You said a diamond is a piece of coal that did well under pressure. My son is under a lot of pressure. I created it. And I realize now. I was creating a piece of coal by trying to crush him, not a diamond. You figured out how to turn that pressure into light in just 10 minutes. The tutors I paid a fortune for couldn't do it in a year. You did it with a story and a piece of chalk. The following weeks were a transformation. Mrs. Gable was no longer just the maid. She was Ethan's tutor. And she was revolutionary. She taught him through stories, through analogies, and through showing him how math existed in the real world. She taught him that making mistakes wasn't a sign of failure, but a step in the learning process. She taught him with patience, unwavering belief, and the wisdom of a woman who had faced far bigger challenges in her life than a math problem. And slowly, Ethan began to shine. His confidence grew. He started to like math. He started to like himself. The day of the final exam arrived. Mr. Sterling was a nervous wreck, pacing the floor. He had started taking more of an interest in his son's life, and the fear of Ethan failing was now not about the family name, but about the boy's own spirit. When Ethan came home, he was beaming. Dad, Mrs. Gable, you won't believe it. He had passed with flying colors. Not just passed, he had aced it. Mrs. Gable burst into tears of joy, pulling him into a tight hug. Mr. Sterling watched them, a massive lump in his throat. The love in the room was more valuable than any stock portfolio he had ever managed. A few days later, Mr. Sterling called Mrs. Gable into his office. Her heart sank. She thought perhaps now that the job was done, she was being let go. He stood up and offered her a chair. She was stunned by the gesture. "Mrs. Gable," he began, his voice serious. "I have spent my entire life calculating the value of things. I've never been wrong until now. I calculated your worth by your job description. I was blind." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a beautiful, larger diamond ring on a platinum band. "This," he said, "is for you. Not as a salary, but as a symbol. You taught my son the value of patience, resilience, and the belief that a person's value is not in their title, but in their character. You took the ugliest, most stressful time in my son's life and turned it into a beautiful memory. You, Mrs. Gable, are not a diamond in the rough. You are a diamond, period." Mrs. Gable looked at the ring, tears streaming down her face. She saw a reflection of her own grandmother's diamond in its sparkle, and her heart felt like it would burst. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just being seen, she was being valued. This story teaches us a profound lesson. It's not a lesson about being rich or about being poor. It's a lesson about how we see people. Mr. Sterling's world was turned upside down not by a financial crash, but by an equation he never knew existed. And that equation is simple. Your net worth doesn't define your human worth. You never know who will be the light in your dark tunnel. You never know whose wisdom will change your life. Every person you meet, no matter their status, carries a wealth of experience, kindness, and love. We need to open our eyes and see the humanity in everyone. The most valuable assets in life aren't stocks or gold. They're the people who believe in you and the moments you share. Mrs. Gable didn't just teach a boy to pass a test. She taught a billionaire how to be a father. She taught Ethan how to believe in himself. She is the perfect reminder that we all sparkle in our own way. And the only thing holding that sparkle back is if we allow the world or our own fear to shroud it in darkness. So, go out there and share this story. If you are moved by the wisdom of Mrs. Gable, if you believe that kindness is the greatest currency of all, leave a comment below and share this video with a friend who needs to hear it. Let us never judge a book by its cover, but by the stories it holds inside. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, always remember to look for the sparkle in others and never stop shining your own.